Thanks for inviting us in. It's 7 o'clock, and we want to welcome you to our Election Night special, airing on all of our WTHR streaming services.
Oh, this is going to be an exciting night. It's a big night in America, of course, right here in central Indiana. So we're going to be cutting in on Channel 13 from time to time during this broadcast. It'll be very fluid. We'll be able to hang out all night and, of course, get you all the info you need to know.
Now, we're going to have some of the vote totals scrolling at the bottom part of your screen throughout this evening as we stream our election coverage. But we want to take a closer look so far at Indiana's U.S. Senate race. This is one of the big races that we're going to be following throughout the evening. Of course, we've got Republican incumbent Todd Young going against Democrat Thomas McDermott and Libertarian James Seniak.
And we've got full team coverage this election night. We're going to get to Dustin Grove in just a little bit. He's joining us tonight from the 13 News Election Center. All kinds of technology in there where he's going to be able to break down race by race.
Anne-Marie Tiernan is here with us in studio tonight. She's talking with our election analysts. It's a great panel. You want to hear from them. And our Jenny Runovich is going to be joining us live from Republican Election Night headquarters. But first, let's check in with Emily Longnecker. She's at Democratic Election headquarters in downtown Indianapolis. Hello, Emily.
Hey, Scott and Felicia. Yeah, this is home base for the Democrats here at Nevermore at Union Station. And over the past hour, it has gotten significantly more crowded here with supporters. We were told by party officials that in a few minutes, Congressman Andre Carson and possibly Indianapolis Mayor Joe Hogsett are set to speak. So stand by for that. But many of the statewide candidates and local candidates will be here tonight with their supporters. Hammond Mayor Tom McDermott is expected tonight. He's running for the United States Senate. We know that. His campaign tells me that he visited some polls today. We also know that the candidate for Secretary of State, Destiny Scott Wells, she is expected to be here tonight, as is incumbent Marion County Prosecutor Ryan Mears. He will also be here tonight with some of his supporters and some of his campaign folks. We know a lot of people are watching that race. We know that yesterday a lot of these statewide candidates, they went on a Get Out the Vote tour that started in Indianapolis and ended in Hammond, where Tom McDermott is the longest serving mayor there. The biggest issues that party leaders say that people are talking about right now, the economy, inflation, and abortion rights here in Indiana. The campaigning, though, over now, and now it's time to see what the results come from all of those campaign speeches, campaign ads, and a pretty long campaign season. Scott, Felicia.
Emily, thanks so much for the update there. We actually got to get out to Jenny Runovich next.
Yeah, she's at Republican headquarters tonight. So, Jenny, what's happening where you are this evening?
Yeah, Scott and Felicia, we're at the JW Marriott in downtown Indianapolis. And just like Emily said, same thing here at Republican HQ, starting to fill in with some GOP VIPs gathering here at the JW Marriott. We are expecting some of the candidates to arrive here probably within about a half hour. And I can tell you that optimism is actually very high. I just spoke with the GOP chairman, Kyle Hupfer, who told me, you know, we are expecting a good night, potentially a great night, maybe even an amazing night. They're talking about kind of three races we're focused on. One is that U.S. Senate race, and incumbent Senator Todd Young. He is expected, Kyle Hupfer tells me, to pretty much be a shoo-in. He had a huge advantage when it comes to fundraising, and this is a red state. He is a Republican. He is expected to kind of win that seat pretty handily. We're also paying close attention to Secretary of State's race with Diego Morales is the candidate there. And then the Marion County race that's very interesting. That's Cindy Carrasco, who's running as a Republican for prosecutor. No Republican has won a prosecutor's race in Marion County since 2006. Republicans think they can change that today. So we'll have to see as those results continue to come in. Of course, we'll continue to keep you updated here from the JW on the GOP. For now, let's send it over to my colleague, Sarah Putman. Sarah?
Well, Jenny, we're live here at the Marion County Election Board headquarters, where I'm told there are about 150 different poll workers making everything happen today. You have some of them over here in the cage handling the ballots. Then you have others working at these tables. You can see they are actually taking those ballots out of the envelopes so then they can be put through this machine right over here, this tabulator. That is how they start getting the information to let us know how the election results will go. After it goes through that tabulator, then another poll worker actually puts that information into a computer. That's actually happening in a different room on the other side of this building. Now we're going to stay here to continue to watch as they work. At this location, they're only handling absentee ballots, about 70,000, and at the other locations, that's where they're handling those in-person votes that took place today. Now we're going to head back over to the studio. Felicia, there's a lot to watch today as these results start to come in.
Vanessa, behind the scenes look there at Marion County. They're counting the votes. A lot of people have had questions this election season as to how these votes are going to be protected and what the process is going to look like, how they're going to be counted. We'll, of course, continue to check in with Sierra. We'll stay with her all night as these votes start rolling in. And we just got word in, of course, it'll be a very fluid night. NBC has called for Todd Young. Senator Todd Young is the winner of this race.
Right. Senator Young winning re-election tonight. He is the Republican incumbent. NBC projecting him currently with 62% of the vote. Thomas McDermott with 34%. 5% right now of the votes are in. But again, NBC News projecting Todd Young to win re-election tonight for the U.S. Senate. And Todd Young will be going back to Washington for another term. So congratulations to Senator Young this evening.
Absolutely. So we are just about an hour and 11 minutes past 6 p.m. That's when polls close. Let's check in with Dustin Grove. He's tonight in our election center here at WTHR. Dustin, what numbers are you seeing right now?
Well, I want to talk about the race that you two were just talking about, the Senate race, and NBC calling it for Todd Young. So I want to give you some insight into why that is. Numbers are very early, but here's an indication as to why they've called it. If we go up to Steuben County, for example, you can see with just very few precincts reporting already, Todd Young winning heavily. In fact, more than double over his challenger McDermott. If we zoom out here, we can see Sullivan County also very similar numbers. Todd Young leading over McDermott 68% to 29% with 38% of precincts reporting. So that's kind of some insight. Now, I want to go to Emily Longnecker and Congressman Andre Carson, I believe, at the podium right now. Emily?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, Congressman Andre Carson just arrived. He is here greeting supporters. He's set to take the stage here at any moment. He was also running for re-election here tonight, set to take his 8th term if he wins. And you know, national analysts have not said that this was really a competitive race. This would be his 8th term in Congress. He is here right now. We know he's a member of the House Intelligence Committee. He is also on transportation and infrastructure. This past summer, held a hearing on unidentified aerial projections, saying that folks, citizens needed to know more about that from the Pentagon and the State Department. So he's right now, he's greeting a lot of supporters. He's well beloved in his district, and he is expected to speak here tonight. In fact, I think he is making his way right now to the podium to speak. Let's just stand by for that. Nope, I guess he's greeting more supporters here. There's a lot of people that want to talk to him. He's the first candidate I see that has arrived here tonight. Oh! Actually, they just introduced Mayor Joe Hogsett. Let's take a listen.
Well, good evening. The night is young. The results are still rolling in across the state and across the country. And while we don't know the final tally, we do know that tonight would not have been possible without countless volunteers who have knocked on doors, called voters, and helped our team finish strong. That is to say nothing of our local and statewide candidates and their staffs who have demonstrated to Indiana what the Democratic Party can do for all Hoosiers. Fighting for free and fair elections, making a stand for the women's reproductive rights, building communities with safe neighborhoods and strong infrastructure. And there's one person in particular I want
the
to call
folks
out
that
tonight.
vote for Democratic candidates this campaign season. He continues to speak. We know that Congressman Andre Carson set to speak here as soon as he is finished. But for right now, Scott, Felicia, we're going to send it back to you.
All right, Emily, thanks so much. And as soon as Andre Carson gets up to the podium, we'll bring you live coverage of his remarks tonight.
Yes, Congressman Andre Carson. We're waiting to hear from him. Let's check in with Anne Marie. We actually have an entire team of analysts tonight. They're in studio helping us break down the races. Hey, Anne.
Well, hey there. Yeah, I'm very happy to introduce our panelists. We're going to start down here at the end with Dr. Melissa Borja, who is from University of Michigan, and she is a political expert, and so we are happy to have her here with us tonight. We also have here in the middle in the blue, Leanne Hulk, and she is representing the Democrats, the Democratic point of view. She's an attorney here in town and also a Democratic strategist. And then we have Robert Vane, who is a Republican and also a principal with Veteran Strategies. So these are our experts tonight. Of course, we're talking about the 7th congressional race with Andre Carson. He has held that seat since 2008. No surprise there.
No surprise.
Yeah.
No surprise at all. Congressman Carson is extremely well-liked, very popular. He does a lot for other candidates. I think I speak for the rest of the 7th District in saying that we're very proud to send him back to Washington.
His grandmother, Julia Carson, he has that family legacy. It's almost been like, as they've talked about it, a family calling, very loyal following within the 7th District and beloved that family.
That's correct. And leadership, the Democrats out in Washington, D.C. absolutely love him as well. So very proud to send him back to Washington.
Yes. So there's a potential that this could be the only Democrat going from the congressional party from Indiana to Washington. It all really kind of hinges on that really close race that we're looking at in the 1st district. Melissa.
Yeah, Congressional District 1 is going to be really exciting to watch. Cook Political rated it as a toss-up, a lot of money, a lot of national attention to that race. So we'll see. It hasn't been held by a Republican in almost 100 years. So it could be a historic night tonight.
Yes. All right. Well, we look forward to more insight from the panel. I was just wondering if you were coming into tonight, Robert, what were you thinking were the big 3 storylines that you were thinking, this is really what's going to make or break it story-wise tonight?
Race I'm looking at is Senate District 31. That's Senator Kyle Walker. He's an incumbent, but this is the first time he's actually faced the voters. Terrific conservative Republican member of the General Assembly. That's one. Obviously, the Marion County prosecutor is something that's probably gotten a lot of attention. And the third one, I would say, now that I believe Todd Young has been called to be reelected, NBC called that, is that 1st district. Peter Visclosky, the Democrat, had a hold on that for decades. Mervane has been there, I think, 2 years, 4 years, not very long. The Republican candidate, veteran, incredibly impressive.
Yeah, Jennifer Ruth Green there. We'll be following that. In the meantime, let's go back downtown where Andre Carson has taken the podium and is addressing the crowd there tonight at the Democratic headquarters.
Got to give a shout out to Shay Joyce. And Brother Andrew, Drew, what it do? You know, elections, they don't happen on social media. They don't happen in ideological arguments over mimosas at Sunday brunch. Movements are not created behind computer screens. They're not just created when we're sitting at home, watching the news, hoping things will get better. They're created when we do the work, and you all have done the work today. On election night in 2016, our faith was shaken a bit. Then on January 6, 2021, my colleagues and I were in the U.S. Capitol as Americans stormed the one place we thought was sacred. Rioters scaled the walls and they smashed windows and they screamed obscenities at police officers. They faced mental and physical injuries for months after. 5 people died. Hundreds more were injured. And then came the calm.
An empty building with broken glass and debris, and then piece by piece, brick by brick, we started to rebuild our democracy. That's what tonight is all about. We have to rebuild again. Win or lose, we need to tell every person who voted today and who didn't vote today that they should never give up. Our party has the best message. Our party has the best agenda. Our party represents the true values of the American people. Our party represents Hoosier values. So let's dust ourselves off and keep rebuilding. We're in touch with the American people. And so what I have to say is don't give up, Democrats. Stay focused, move forward. We love you, and we've got this. God bless. Thank you.
All right, so there is Andre Carson speaking at Democratic Party headquarters. Andre Carson has been a congressman here in the city of Indianapolis, representing the city of Indianapolis for 7 terms, and we're going to continue to monitor not only what's happening there at the Democratic headquarters in downtown Indy, but also the Republican headquarters throughout the evening, Felicia. Absolutely, and then of course we'll check in with our team of analysts in just a little bit. But we want to get to Marion County election headquarters. That's where Sierra Putman has been following what's going on. And before we get to Sierra, though, let's check in with Ann so they can kind of break down what's happening. Ann?
All right, so we were talking, we were just hearing there Andre Carson addressing the crowd there. He has won the last 3 elections. He's going now back for his 8th term. Your thoughts on that? And also, we were talking to Bob earlier about his top 3 things that he's looking for tonight, and we'd like to hear your thoughts, Leanne.
Let me address really quickly, Ann, what Bob mentioned about the 1st congressional district. I want to make sure everybody knows that in 2021, the Republican state legislature redrew the lines to make the 1st congressional district significantly more competitive. And I think that's really important for voters to keep in mind. This isn't a change in political views of anyone. It's a change in district lines. And so it made the 1st district more competitive. I think we're going to see the 1st district. I think that is something we're going to watch tonight. I think Congressman Mervan is going to hold that seat. It's unfortunate that there had to be so much money spent on that race.
It's a different time zone too,
and in a different time zone, right? So I think that's something we want to watch. I also would like to watch to see whether Destiny Wells can become the 1st Secretary of State since 1990, the Democratic Secretary of State, and I think we need to watch whether the Democrats can break the supermajority, and let's keep an eye on Hamilton County.
All right, and for the 31st and 32nd districts there,
and there's
especially.
several more, actually.
Yeah, in addition to that.
Several more we can watch.
Okay. What do you want to add there, Melissa?
I think 3 themes, and they actually relate to Hamilton County. I'm very interested in seeing how particular issues motivate voters. So we know that here in Indiana, we had a very big piece of legislation related to abortion this summer. I'm curious to know how suburban women are going to respond to that issue and if they're going to show up at the polls. So number 1, how will abortion play out? Number 2, the degree to which national politics shapes local choices. We used to say all politics is local. I don't think that's true anymore given the nature of money, institutions, media. So I want to see how some of these big national issues are playing out locally. And voter turnout. 2018, the last time we had a midterm election, saw historic voter turnout. I think we're going to see high turnout nationally, but I'm curious to see what it'll look like here in Indiana.
All right, we'll check back. In the meantime, let's go over to Sierra Putman, who is at the Marion County election headquarters. This is where all the hard work and the counting is underway right now, Sierra.
And you know, elect poll workers here and are hard at work. I started to see a couple new faces of those workers that are currently opening up envelopes and to help count those absentee ballots. And you know, their job is a little easier now because of this machine right over here. This is the first time we're able to show you this. This is a letter opener. You can see it just actually went down for a second, but there it is. It's back up and running. It speeds up the process because for several years, the poll workers were only allowed to open up these envelopes by hand. That speeds up the process a lot. They have, I'm told, more than 70,000 absentee ballots that they have to go through, which means the people here believe they will be here for several hours, possibly into the wee hours of the night. We just don't know how long they're going to be here to make sure that they can count all of these votes. We're going to be here and we'll continue to have live updates for you. Back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Sierra, thanks so much. So those workers are going to have a long night ahead. They've already been at work, Felicia, since 4 o'clock this morning. Could be there until the early hours, and we'll continue to monitor that throughout the evening.
Yeah, Sierra mentioning that they're opening these by hand. Certainly something that's taken a lot of time, tedious work there. All
right, let's go ahead and put some numbers up on the screen and show you what we are learning about one of the big races that we're following this evening, Secretary of State. Again, you can see upper left-hand part of the screen, only 1% of the precincts are reporting currently Republican Diego Morales in the lead with 55%, Democrat Destiny Wells at 40%, and Jeffrey Moore is at 5%. He's the Libertarian candidate. Again, this is very early. 1% of the precincts reporting, and Diego Morales, the Republican, with a 15-point lead currently right now.
Yeah, that's a substantial lead. 21,423 votes, that candidate leading by right there. All right, well, we, of course, are going to continue our coverage tonight. We want to get out to Dustin Grove. He is monitoring a lot of the races around the state of Indiana. Dustin, what are you learning now?
Well, I was just actually following along what you were talking about with the Secretary of State race, Felicia. I wanted to put up these numbers here and show you that we are watching the numbers come in county by county. You can see if we zoom in here to Steuben County, you can see that Diego Morales is up 59% to Destiny Scott Wells 38%. And Democrats had been hoping, because this is an open race, an open seat with no incumbent, that may give more opportunity to Destiny Scott Wells, the Democratic challenger in this race, because the Secretary of State that position has not been occupied by a Democrat for almost 30 years, since I believe it was 1994 when Joe Hogsett was Secretary of State. But the numbers not reflecting that so far, and not a surprise as far as Republicans are concerned, because this is a heavily Republican state. So that's where we are on Secretary of State right now. A lot of numbers still to come in. Indiana Senate, the U.S. Senate for Indiana, of course, already been called for the incumbent, Todd Young there. And we're also zooming out to take a look at the balance of power in the U.S. Senate overall. So this is a look at where things are. 35 seats in the Senate up for grabs. And you can see that the states right here, these are the states that have been called for Republicans for these seats that are open in the Senate: Georgia, Kentucky, Indiana, and Florida. I shouldn't say called. They're either they have been called, or they're leaning Republican so far. And then this one over here, New Hampshire, for Democrats. So that's kind of where we are right now. A lot of these states are too close to call and considered a toss-up, including Pennsylvania, which has been covered heavily at the national level. Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman and the other candidates there in Pennsylvania, Dr. Mehmet Oz for the U.S. Senate. Now, also, a lot of eyes watching Congress, in particular the U.S. House of Representatives, and a lot of people are looking at Indiana right now in particular. Indiana, not a state that a lot of people pay attention to, frankly, in a lot of national elections, but they're looking specifically, everybody right now, at U.S. House District 1 right here. The incumbent, Frank Mervyn, freshman Congressman Frank Mervyn, running for re-election, challenged by Republican Jennifer Ruth Green. Now, this particular district in Northwest Indiana is heavily Democratic. It's been been held by a Democrat in that seat for something like more than 90 years. But this district was redrawn, giving more of an opportunity for the Republican challenger. And the Cook Political Group, as you heard by one of our analysts a few minutes ago, that is considered to be an actual toss-up. So that's why this is considered a bellwether district. And a lot of people across the country looking at this district, because polls have closed here as opposed to polls in the Central and Mountain and Pacific coast time zones. They're looking to see where these numbers are going, because if they start to lean toward the Republican Jennifer Ruth Green in what has historically been a Democrat district, that could spell potential problems for Democrats across the country. That's the latest from here. We're going to continue to watch these numbers as they come in. We'll send it back to you in the studio.
All right, that's Dustin Grove live from our election center tonight here at Channel 13. And we're just getting more numbers in for Senator Todd Young. Let's bring those up on the screen so folks can see. NBC is actually calling Todd Young the winner tonight.
Yeah, he is the incumbent and has won re-election tonight with 59% of the vote. Again, you can see upper left-hand part of your screen, 2% of the precincts have reported, but NBC again calling this race tonight. So Todd Young will be heading back to Washington for another term, beating Thomas McDermott easily tonight, at least based on the precincts that are currently reporting. So Todd Young is heading back to Washington for a second term. So we know that he is celebrating this evening, and that leads us to what we may be seeing hopefully soon down at Republican headquarters, and that's where Jenny Runovich joins us tonight. So Jenny, let's bring you in and talk about whether or not we're going to be hearing from Senator Young soon.
Well, not quite soon, maybe in the next 15 minutes. I'm told by his people that he'll likely speak not before 7:45, but probably around 7:45. We can expect him to take the podium here at the JW Marriott. This is where the GOP's watch party is happening, and no surprise for them that Todd Young easily was reelected to that Senate seat. In fact, people told me hours ago, they said, you know what, all the polling that they saw was showing that this was going to be a very easy win for him. He defended that Senate seat that he's held since 2017. This will be his second term, and he'll spend another 6 years in the U.S. Senate. He was really seen as a front runner in this race. He way out fundraised his challengers by a huge margin. And even though Democrats and Tom McDermott, the mayor of Hammond, really kind of focused on the abortion issue and the overturn of Roe versus Wade, thought that might really resonate with voters, Todd Young kind of ignored the abortion issue. He is pro-life, but he kind of ignored the candidate, ignored that issue, and focused on what he believed would resonate with voters more. And that is the crux of his campaign: the economy, inflation, crime, national security. And Republicans in general believe that Hoosiers will vote with their pocketbook, and at least clearly in this particular race, that is what happened, and Todd Young will be going back to Washington as a U.S. Senator for the next 6 years. We'll send it back to you, Felicia.
Thanks so much, Jenny. We appreciate that. Todd Young, one of the candidates, not a Republican candidate, not endorsed by President Trump, former President Trump there.
All right, so Senator Young heading back to Washington for a second term. Let's get back down to the Democratic headquarters right now. That's where our friend Emily Longnecker is standing by. Emily, what's happening where you are?
Hi, Scott. Hi, Felicia. Yeah, just talked to Tom McDermott's campaign people, and he is expected here, although they don't have a timetable yet. And as we've been talking about, NBC has called the race for Senator Todd Young. Tom McDermott acknowledged from the beginning that this was going to be an uphill battle, in part because he was outraised when it came to campaign funds. And national experts said from the beginning that this was not a competitive race. And yet Tom McDermott crisscrossed the state in these past 6 months talking to Hoosier voters. And he said from the beginning if he was going to get to Washington, it was going to be because Hoosier women put him there over the abortion debate. Another issue that he campaigned on was legalizing marijuana. He even smoked a joint in one of his campaign ads. He also talked about he thought the biggest threat to democracy was the hyper-partisanship that you see in this country at this point. He talked a lot about that, and he himself comes from a house divided. His mother is a Democrat, his father is a Republican, and a supporter of former President Donald Trump at that. So Mayor McDermott telling me in an interview that it made for some interesting dinner conversations. But, you know, his campaign slogan from the beginning was all Hoosier, no BS. And he said that is because he was a straight talker. He said he doesn't sugarcoat things. And he said that that's why he's been the longest serving mayor of Hammond, Indiana. And now it looks like he'll stay in that role. Folks.
All right, Emily Longnecker reporting tonight live from Democratic headquarters. We'll be getting back to her throughout the evening. We're going to be with you tonight until at least 9 o'clock here across all of our streaming platforms. And we've got comprehensive coverage for you throughout the evening, both over on Channel 13 and also tonight at 11 o'clock with our comprehensive rundown on this election night.
Absolutely. Very fluid coverage tonight. Numbers will be flying in. We're staying on top of them. Let's get straight to Dustin Grove, where he's monitoring things in our election center tonight here at Channel 13. Hey, Dustin.
Hey, Felicia. I want to update you on what numbers are coming in for our U.S. House districts here in Indiana. Starting over here with U.S. House District 3, this is the Fort Wayne area. Numbers we have so far, Republican incumbent Jim Banks leading heavily over the Democrat challenger Gary Snyder, 69% to 26%. House District 1, nothing so far. They are on the Central Time. They're on Central Time, so we're going to probably wait a little bit until we expect those numbers to start coming in. But again, that's the district that a lot of people across the country are watching. That may be a bellwether to determine where other toss-ups across the country go. Coming over here, we've got Auditor of State numbers with 2% reporting Republican incumbent Tara Klutz leading over Zenai Brooks, the Democrat challenger, and John Schick, the Libertarian candidate in that race. Secretary of State with 3% reporting Diego Morales, the Republican, leading over Democrat Destiny Scott Wells and Libertarian Jeffrey Maurer. House District 5, nothing so far. And then we've got, again, Todd Young, NBC calling it for Todd Young over Thomas McDermott and James Siniak. Treasurer of State with 2% reporting Republican Daniel Elliott leading over Jessica McClellan, 62 to 38%. And then House District 9, nothing so far. Then that district as well. We're going to keep an eye on it, and we'll come to you as soon as we have new numbers to report. Ann, back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Dustin. You know, we're sitting here talking with the panel about the Secretary of State's race. That is one of the ones that's a statewide race that is hotly contested. And it's also an important race because we're heading into this election where voters, not only in Indiana, but across the country, Dr. Moore, are expressing concern about the democratic process and really the accuracy of the vote counting. Is my vote safe? Is this process accurate?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. In preparation for this evening, I looked at some research from the Pew Research Center. And their recent study for this season found that democracy, specifically the health of our democracy, is one of the key issues motivating people. 70% of Americans said that they are worried about the health of democracy. This is playing out differently for Republicans and Democrats. On one hand, you have Republicans who don't trust vote counts. Democrats are worried about Republicans who don't accept election results. And January 6th insurrection is very prominent in people's memories. So people are very concerned about the health of democracy and the integrity of our elections. This is true nationally. I think it's true locally with the Secretary of State race. We'll see if the person who's going to be overseeing the health of our elections it's competitive, I think, because people are thinking about that issue.
Right. The Secretary of State race is not something, you know, we think of the mayor's race or the governor's race or the senator's race, but Secretary of State hasn't been something that's really been one of those front runner races like it is this year. Robert, why would you say that is?
Evan Bayh. Evan Bayh basically created the importance of the Secretary of State's race in 1986 when he won and used it as a launching pad to be a governor and a senator. Took it in completely different directions. The Democrats haven't, as you stated, haven't won Secretary of State since 1990. They haven't won Treasurer of State since 1970s. And the last time there was a Democrat Auditor of State, I was in high school, at Howe High School. So all these statewide races are somewhat of a bellwether. The Secretary of State race always gets the most attention. But very quickly, I love the footage of the people working the polls and counting the votes. I used to run the elections in Marion County for Doris Ann Sadler when she was clerk. I believe that the elections are fair and honest and accurate, and one of the reasons you can keep it that way is by working the polls. And the more people we have working the polls, the more people we have volunteering for traveling boards and all the things that put the elections on, the better it'll be. So don't complain, volunteer.
Yeah, but it's about the leadership. Do you think Diego Morales has the leadership, has the character required for the integrity of that office?
I do. And I'm going to be honest and say he has had a very rough campaign. He has answered questions in a way that I think should have been done better. But I've known Diego for a long time, and if the fact that he's had the varnish stripped off him in this campaign means that he can be a very good Secretary of State with good people around him, then that's what I hope for as a Hoosier.
Leanne?
Yeah, well, I agree with what Bob said about the importance of especially this news coverage and showing the insight of how votes are counted. I think that's really important for people to regain trust in the process. I think there was a national effort by the Trump administration to continue to undermine the legitimacy of elections, unfortunately. But I think this race is interesting because we have to remember Diego Morales as beat the sitting Secretary of State incumbent this summer. And I think it took a lot of people by surprise. And he also, now there's allegations against him of voter fraud, committing voter fraud possibly in 2018. He's been accused of sexual assault like multiple times. He's been accused of lying about his military service, spending money to buy a campaign card. There's all sorts of issues that he has, and I think that's actually what's keeping voters engaged. And it's true on both sides. They care about democracy and are concerned about democracy on the Republican side and the Democratic side for different reasons. But I think those issues that surround his campaign are central to both parties.
Well, and this certainly is an office where those character and integrity issues are paramount. Destiny Wells, obviously, who you believe would be the best person to be running that office.
That's correct. She has been working so hard going across this state, meeting voters where they are and talking to them about the importance of the Secretary of State's office and why she'd be the best candidate. She wants to increase turnout in this state, and she really wants to connect with not just urban voters, but rural voters and suburban voters, the important voters that Democrats need to connect with to win statewide.
You can talk a lot of smack about Diego. You cannot say he didn't work hard. He has worked hard like crazy. I'm not saying that she hasn't, but Diego has focused his campaign on the grassroots in a Republican state that was very smart. That's why I think eventually he's going to come out the winner tonight.
He was fired from working for the Secretary of State, correct?
But he made it through all the processes, and he has the endorsement of the party and our leaders. So if they didn't believe in him, including the person who quote unquote fired him, endorsed him. So those would be the people who would say, please don't do it. They clearly didn't. Diego's winning. I think he will win. How he performs in office, we have to cross our fingers and hope for the best, because all of us need a strong Secretary of State for the election process. And what we saw today with everyone, it reminded me of a very funny story, seeing the election stuff 20 years ago, being yelled at by her father while I was help counting votes, the wonderful Bill Groth. So you know what, people get fired up, and that's okay because they're participating in the process.
Yeah. So I'm just going to come back to you real quickly, Leanne. How much do you believe that if Diego Morales is elected, that it is a Republican straight party vote versus an endorsement of Diego Morales?
I think that's a great question. I hope that it's not an endorsement of Diego Morales. I'm still hopeful that Destiny can pull it out for so many reasons. But this will be something really interesting to watch. Does this Republican Party fall in line, or do they vote their conscience? Do they vote in terms of what's best for our state, for our democracy? Or are they just going to fall in line? I think that's a really big question. I think we need to look at turnout and kind of compare those numbers to the election results, and we'll be able to give those answers a little bit later on.
But if the Democrats cannot beat Diego, they are in much bigger trouble than even I, as the Republican flag sitting here, think they are. If they can't beat him, then they've got a long, long way to go.
Dr. Borja, you want to add anything to that?
I'd like to return to just something you said earlier about your appreciation for showing the vote count. I think it's worth pointing out that there is a partisan divide on the degree to which people are trusting the election, that Republicans are much warier of trusting the process than Democrats are. And we really see that happen beginning in 2020. In 2020, about 50%, only about 50% of Republicans said that they would trust the election process. And it's a little bit better now, according to Pew Research, but it's not much better. And so I appreciate you pointing out at the very beginning, let's show those vote counts and in the voting process, and let's build faith in the system. I think we need more reminders for people that our system is working well, that Hoosiers and all Americans should value fairness.
I would only gently disagree in one case, and that is Florida 2000. That wasn't our party that was so fulminating about the election results and saying Bush was selected, not elected, and he cheated and not every vote counted. There are lots of questions about voter technology. When I was the election board administrator, we sued our election machine provider and won $250,000 because they weren't trustworthy. There's a lot of reasons to question. I'm just saying that the antidote for those questions is involvement. Go work the polls. Go pass out the slate. Go be an inspector. Go do all the things that make our elections work twice a year, 3 years out of 4 for the history of the city. Go get involved, and I think the more you're involved, the more you will understand. You could maybe twiggle around the edges a little bit, but as far as elections being stolen, I don't believe in that at all.
I appreciate that. I will say one more thing that's important other than getting involved, which is speaking the truth and saying very forcefully and rejecting the falsehood that is circulating among Republicans that Donald Trump won the election in 2020.
But Hillary Clinton said that 2016 was not accurate. She said it the day after the election. So all I'm saying is don't put it all on my party when I can sit here and talk about Democrats saying the same thing. Or if you want to talk about 1960 and the fact that Lyndon Johnson...
I'm going to put a little rap here. You know, this is the thing. It takes the leader, and that's the Secretary of State. The leader who is going to be elected tonight is going to have that ultimate responsibility of the accuracy of those votes. And that action is going on right now with Sierra Putman. She's downtown at the Marion County Election Board and talking a lot about the work that's going on where you are right now, Sierra, and that these votes are accurate, that they are timely, and that they are open, and that it's not done in secret.
Exactly, and that's part of the reason why we are here tonight, to give you at home a look at how the process works in at least one county. It's not like this in every county across Indiana, but this is how it works in Marion County, where you have hundreds of thousands of people voting. Now, right over here, this seems like a simple enough machine. This is a leather opener, but it's actually a pretty big deal because it's going to speed up the process for these election workers. Now, again, they are only handling absentee ballots. Those are those mail-in ballots. Those are the votes coming in from our military workers, as well as from people who decided to vote in person but do early voting. And you also have these poll workers over here. You can see they are really busy. We noticed an increase of these workers. They're here taking these ballots out of the envelopes so they can then be tabulated. At last check, I was told that there were more than 70,000 absentee ballots that they had to go through. But that number is actually going to change because the very last absentee ballots start coming in at about 6 p.m. So we're waiting to get an updated number. Marion County also told me that they had, at last check, more than 151,000 people that voted in person today. Again, that number is going to change. We're hoping to get that number, the updated number for that, again, in 10 to 15 minutes. So they're hard at work here. We don't know how long they're going to be working here, but we are going to be watching just so you can understand this process and see how it works. Back to you guys in the studio.
Yeah, Sierra, we appreciate you giving us just this insight, basically a snapshot of what's happening here. I think with all the talk that's been going on as of late between 2020 election and this election as well, transparency is what's needed. So I did get this information from indianavoters.in.gov. Anyone at home can go take a look at this. So the Voting System Technical Oversight Program, that is hosted by Ball State University. And the program tests all of the election equipment used in Indiana. So they're providing another layer of safety and security. And then also IU has a place in this and their Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research. So the Indiana Secretary of State's office, they've partnered with Indiana University. They review and improve the state's election cybersecurity incident response plan. And then, of course, they help prepare election officials in all 92 counties within Indiana. So there's a place, there's a system of checks and balances that has been put in into place to try to not only build transparency, but to build security in what's happening. That's just a small snapshot of what's going on. Of course, the federal government is also involved in oversight, and a couple other things too that are in place that you can find at that website. Again, indianavoters.in.gov. The Secretary of State's office has done a lot to make sure that not only are these results accurate, timely, and of course transparency is provided.
I think it's very interesting for us to see in real time these live pictures coming out of the Marion County election headquarters, where you at home can go ahead and watch these elections, the votes be counted, these absentee ballots be counted. And so I think that's very interesting, because this hasn't happened every election. We've not been able to see this in real time. And so I think that's great. We're going to be going back to Sierra throughout the evening. Want to let you know that we are just moments away from hearing from Senator Todd Young, who has been reelected to a second term in the U.S. Senate. So we'll be going to Jenny Runovich coming up in a moment, but we want to get back into our newsroom, check back with Dustin Grove, who's monitoring all the major races across the country, specifically how this is going to, impact the balance of power in terms of Congress and the Senate. Dustin?
Yeah, in fact, we'll show you right now the balance of power in the Senate right now. 35 seats up for grabs tonight, and it looks like so far of those seats, 1, 2, 3, 4 have either been called for or are leaning Republican. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 have either been called for or are leaning Democrat. Among those states, you've got Ohio, Tim Ryan leading over Republican challenger J.D. Vance 68% to 32%. That's one of the races that was declared too close to call earlier tonight, so a lot of eyes on that one. Nothing so far in Pennsylvania, another one that was considered a toss-up, so we're keeping an eye on this. Also watching the House of Representatives, so this is where we're looking at some of the district races in Indiana. You can see Jim Banks looks like is he declared? Did somebody declare this for Jim Banks in District 3? Yes. Okay, NBC declaring Jim Banks, incumbent Jim Banks, in U.S. House District 3, which is in the Fort Wayne area. 48,600 some votes over Democratic challenger Gary Snyder and independent Nathan Gotch. So District 1 in the House, though, that's the one that a lot of eyes are on across the country. Democrat Frank Mervyn, and the incumbent in that race, Republican challenger Jennifer Ruth Green. No numbers in that race, again, because they're in the central time zone. Could be some time before we get those numbers rolling in. Want to walk over here and show you the Secretary of State's race in Indiana. We've got numbers coming in county by county. Statewide, it looks like with 5% of the vote, Diego Morales up considerably over Destiny Scott Wells, 57% to 37%. And then as you take a look at the map of the state of Indiana, we've got it being filled in by the colors here. Blue indicates Democrat, red indicates Republican, and then the different shades are which way they're leaning. So Boone County is leaning more Republican towards Diego Morales with 50%. It's a little closer in Boone County, Diego Morales over Destiny Scott Wells, 50 to 41%. So we're keeping an eye on that race and all of the others, statewide and local and national. We'll continue to follow it here in the newsroom. We'll send it back to you in the studio for now.
Dustin Grove doing a great job there, keeping track of so many races that are going to impact government here in the next 2 to 4 to 6 years, depending on the terms. So thank you, Dustin. We'll get back to you throughout the evening.
Absolutely. The votes are rolling in. The numbers are rolling in. Folks are counting them. We'll keep you updated. Let's get to Jenny Runovich. She is live at the JW Marriott. This is the GOP headquarters for tonight. Jenny, what's going on there now?
Well, Felicia, I can tell you, you can feel the buzz starting to kind of increase here. We are awaiting Senator Todd Young to take the podium you see behind me. He's expected to speak, I would say, probably in the next 10 minutes or so. We're kind of going back and forth with his folks, waiting to hear exactly when he'll make his acceptance speech. But you can see a lot of his supporters, they've kind of herded into the center with their signs. We also spotted his fellow senator, Senator Mike Braun, is here now, and we will expect to hear from Senator Todd Young soon. You know, I want to kind of give you a read of the room, the stakes, the message, the mood of the GOP here in Indiana. The stakes clearly, as Dustin has painted a great picture of, are high. This is a consequential election, both nationally, especially nationally, with the balance of power, and clearly Senator Todd Young will help accomplish what Republicans are seeking, and that's to keep all of the current Senate seats. They're also hoping, of course, to flip at least one Democratic seat in order to get that balance of power swinging their way. Statewide, Republicans are hoping to maintain their complete control on state offices. That could be interesting, especially with the Secretary of State's office, which I know our analysts have talked about. That one has seen some controversy, some concern from even Republicans about the quality of their candidate, the character of their candidate. So that's one we'll be watching. Redistricting, though, has been very friendly to Republicans, and so they have tried to kind of seize on two weak spots that they have seen. One of those is in Northwest Indiana. So people here, even though we're not in Northwest Indiana, there's been a lot of chatter about that U.S. congressional 1st District race, and that is with Jennifer Ruth Green. If she ends up beating Frank Mervan, who is, just a one-term incumbent up in the region near Gary, she is an Air Force veteran. She's in the National Guard. She would be the only Black Republican woman in Congress, in the U.S. House, rather, if she's elected. And I talked with the GOP chair about her chances, and they said, Kyle Hupfer said, people are voting with their pocketbook. That's what they believe, and they think she kind of resonates, her message resonates with people's money, groceries, gas prices, inflation, things that they're feeling every day. They think she has kind of resonated that message, so we'll see what happens there. And if that happens, that would be huge for Republicans, just because a Democrat has held a seat there for about 90 years. They're also focused on Cindy Carrasco. We'll get to that later on this evening, but for now, again, all these folks kind of waiting on Senator Todd Young to make his acceptance speech as he will head to the U.S. Senate for another 6 years. Scott and Felicia.
Thank you, Jenny. We'll be standing by to hear from Senator Young. Jenny Ranovich reporting live from JW Marriott tonight, the GOP headquarters. And she mentioned this congressional race in the 1st District. 92 years it has been a Democratic stronghold. So we'll still continue to watch for that to see what happens and what it could imply for the nation, across the nation, what it could mean.
Yeah, that may be a little later this evening because they're on Central Time, and the polls up in the northwest part of our state closed just a short time ago. Typically what happens is that we would hear the concession speech first and then the acceptance speech, so perhaps that's why we've not heard yet from Senator Todd Young. So let's go to Democratic headquarters tonight, and we've got Emily Longnecker there. So any word on whether or not Thomas McDermott is planning his concession speech anytime soon there, Em?
We have not seen Tom McDermott yet here at Democratic election headquarters. We're waiting on him. We don't know if he is going to speak tonight, but one thing we know is Tom McDermott bills himself as a straight talker. Actually, we're going to be joined right now by Mike Schmuel, with the head of the Democratic Party here in Indiana. So, Mike, we heard Congressman Carson talking earlier. He seemed to be kind of giving folks a pep talk. He kind of seemed to be acknowledging it might be a tough night for the Democratic Party here.
It could be. I think it's a little too early to tell. It was great to see Mayor Joe Hogsett, Congressman Andre Carson. Good news for him tonight, obviously. He'll remain the congressman here in Indianapolis. He's worked so hard to deliver for Marion County, for Central Indiana. I think votes are being counted all across the state. I think we're just going to have to see what those tallies start to look like. I think it's still a little early, and we just got to make sure that more votes are counted.
NBC is calling the race for Senator Young at this point. I'm sure you're aware of that.
I have seen some of that. I would also say that some bigger counties haven't reported yet, and so we look up at Northwest Indiana, Lake County, where Mayor Tom McDermott is based out of, Mayor Hammond. You look at our own county here, still the full numbers need to be tallied here in Marion County. I think also where Fort Wayne is, Allen County, that's a big county. Fort Wayne's second largest city in Indiana. Those votes need to be tallied as well. So I don't know if the full picture is there quite yet. And it could tighten.
Mayor McDermott has acknowledged, though, that it has been an uphill battle, this campaign, that he was out fundraised incredibly, first off.
Absolutely, and I think that a midterm election when one president, is in power, usually the first midterm election for that president, the opposite party, does fairly well. So there's no question there were fierce headwinds coming into election night tonight. Todd Young also very well financed, lots of money, lots of PAC donations, corporate donations, things like that. So he was able to communicate his message pretty effectively. But I will say, Tom McDermott traveled around this state. He met with thousands of Hoosier voters. He went up on television all around Indiana, and I think he should be proud of the campaign that he ran.
Secretary of State race, we're still waiting for Destiny Scott Wells. I'm told from her campaign that she will be here at some point tonight. Everybody is watching that race pretty close.
Yeah, we're watching that race very closely. I think Hoosiers have a very stark choice between those two candidates, Destiny Wells, a veteran, an attorney. I think she would really keep our elections, our future elections, safe and secure. Diego Morales, lots of questions about his fitness for office, lots of questions about his past, and I think that a lot of Hoosiers, at least we've seen here in central Indiana, definitely made some choices to lean more toward Destiny. What that picture looks like around the state remains to be seen, but again, it's early, votes are being counted all around Indiana, and we're just going to have to wait and see.
Mike Schmull, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it very much. That was Mike Schmull, head of the Democratic Party here in Indiana. So yeah, we're waiting on Mayor Tom McDermott to come. We're also waiting on Destiny Scott Wells at some point, expected to make an appearance. And you heard Mike Schmull talking about the fact that they're still waiting. They're still waiting for some of the numbers to come in, even though NBC has called it for Senator Todd Young, and we're waiting for him to speak at any moment at Republican headquarters. So that's the picture here at the Democratic headquarters. Ian?
All right, Emily, thanks so much. I want to welcome our viewers who are joining us now. It is 8 o'clock. You've been hearing from Emily Longnecker, who is reporting from the Democratic headquarters, waiting on the Secretary of State's race, waiting to hear from Hammond Mayor Tom McDermott, who, at least according to NBC, has lost this Senate race to Todd Young. And we've got a panel, don't we, in studio tonight breaking down all of these different races, Felicia.
Absolutely. Anne Marie Tiernan joining us now, ushering in that panel. Anne, what are folks saying?
Well, we're really wanting to see some numbers come in on that prosecutor's race. Ryan Mears and Cindy Carrasco, so far, no reporting yet coming in from Marion County. That's something we're really closely looking at. But as we were looking to see, what's the storyline right now, what really caught our attention was the State Representative District 39. Jerry Torr, the Republican, he was first elected there in 1996. This is really the heart of Carmel. And so this is really interesting. This is this Hamilton County area. We've only got about 5% of the vote reporting in, but so far he is losing right now 45% to the Democratic challenger Mac McNally. This is an interesting race. What do you see when you see that Jerry Torr, this get your fingers crossed there, right? He's the Republican, longtime incumbent. Why is he in trouble?
Senate Bill 1. A lot of the abortion stuff has hurt Republicans in suburban areas. There's no reason to bury the lead, right? We know that. But that would be, I really, really hope Jerry Torr wins. He's tremendously respected by both parties. He's a terrific, terrific public servant. And that would be a considerable blow, not only to Carmel, because now you would then elect someone who is going to be in the super minority, but to, I think, the civic process, because Jerry's the guy who can get things done. He can talk to both parties and say, look, let's come up with something. I know a lot of Democrats who think the world of him, so my fingers are crossed.
Yeah, this has to give you some, good feelings here that you've got a longtime incumbent really at risk with the Democratic challenger now in the 39th.
Yeah, well, aside from the Secretary of State's race and our hope that Destiny Wells can be the next Secretary of State, the second biggest story that could end up being the biggest story of the night is how well these candidates do in Hamilton County, a little bit in Zionsville as well, these suburban areas. I think the Democratic Party has done an incredible job of reaching these voters. And as Bob said, abortion in these highly competitive races, which, by the way, there are very few of them, thanks to the Republicans drawing these lines so that there are almost just a handful left in Indiana. And by the way, that does impact that does impact turnout. Good for him, bad for the rest of us. But this could be the story of the night, and not just Jerry Torr's race. Matt McNally was an excellent candidate. The Hamilton County in particular has done an incredible job of recruiting really stellar candidates that connect with voters. Before, in the last, maybe 8 to 12 years, it was really hard to find a Democrat willing to run. And now, because these races are competitive, we've got great candidates. I think people should look at the Jen Pasquantino race, which covers Zionsville and Boone County, and then West Carmel too, with Joey Mayer's race. There's a longtime incumbent there that I think is going to have a real fight, and Jocelyn Vere's race as well for Senate.
And you would know better than I would, but didn't President Biden carried Carmel, but not Hamilton County in 20?
That's correct. And Joe Donnelly has won Hamilton County before, I think back in 2012.
When he beat Murdoch.
When he beat Murdoch, yes.
So, Dr. Borja, I want to bring you in real quickly on this. We were talking before the show started tonight about the suburban vote and also the younger vote and the issues. These are social justice and Senate Bill 1. These might be some of these issues that change the suburban mother, the suburban woman, and also bringing out the younger voters. Do you think that that's anything at play here in this District 39 results or not?
I think so. The thing I would actually call attention to in Hamilton County is demographic change. So we've seen Hamilton County become more diverse over the past decade. We've seen Indiana in general become more diverse. And we see a lot of groups like Asian Americans increase their presence in places like Hamilton County. That's been a story for the past few elections. I think that's part of the story that we'll see tonight, in addition to, of course, the significance of abortion. And what I think is notable is we all know that the issue of abortion, specifically SB 1 here in Indiana, has been so radioactive that candidates in those suburban areas don't want to talk about it. We see, for example, in J.D. Ford's race with Alex Choi, that Alex Choi didn't really want to answer questions about it. We saw Republican candidates removing references to abortion on their website. So I think that this is very interesting. It was well known that this could be an issue that makes Republican candidates nervous because it is so motivating for suburban women, Democratic and middle of the road.
And Alex Choi doesn't have a record, right? But Jerry Torr does. He voted for the abortion ban. So.
And really, Robert, this isn't a surprise to you because you saw that Jerry Torr went on TV in ads in this last week, and that was a sign that Jerry Torr might be in trouble.
Absolutely accurate.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see that. I knew it was a close race, but I didn't know it was that close. I really do hope that he wins, though, because we need people like Jerry Torr in the General Assembly who can talk to both sides and who can work with people to get things done. If he loses, then that doesn't necessarily make it a bad Republican night in Indiana, because it's already a good Republican night with Todd Young and Aaron Houchin and others, but that'll certainly take some of the shine off of it.
Yeah. Another motivator, you cannot underestimate the drive of what's going on this education, public school boards, in Fishers, in Zionsville, in Carmel, in Avon. Those are big drivers to get voters out to the polls, and maybe what's driving what we've been seeing in our reporting here from Bob Siegel earlier, a really big turnout in these suburban areas.
Yeah, Anne-Marie, all politics is local. And when you have contested school board, highly competitive school board races like that, people are paying attention because, just like inflation, where their kids go to school and the quality of their schools matters very much to them, and so they can connect with that race. It's, as Bob said earlier, it is difficult to get people to care about Secretary of State's race, but school board, They absolutely care about education is a really top issue, a big time top issue right now. And then the same with the state house. Our rights were taken away, and who has the power to do something about it? The state legislature. And so that's why I think you're going to see some shifts, particularly in Hamilton County.
One of the best things that's happening is that more people are getting involved in school board races and school board meetings. That is a very welcomed event. Somebody's got to tackle these god-awful teacher unions, and someone's got to say, look, hey, look, some of the curriculum just isn't fit for young kids, and I'm thrilled. For years, the education establishment said, parents need to be more involved. We need parents to be more involved. Now they're more involved, and they're complaining about it. So pick which side you want to complain about. I love to see it. I love to see that the Republicans are playing hard in these suburban counties about the school board races. More power to them.
Yeah, a lot of educators would take great offense to your blanket statement about the teachers union.
The teachers union, not teachers, the teachers union. Yes.
We do know that teachers' pay in Indiana is subpar compared to contiguous states.
Teachers' pay is significantly better in Indiana compared to other states. And in places like IPS, it's really good. And a lot of teachers, a lot of potential teachers, choose to work in charter schools or Catholic schools, parochial schools, even though
where
they know
you do
the pay
not
is
make
less.
money.
And where you can't collectively bargain for your rights.
So
Exactly.
curriculum,
But they make that choice.
curriculum and security, big issues at schools, and that's been a big talker, at these school board races. And we're following them right now with Dustin Grove, who's in the newsroom. What's the latest you got there, Dustin?
Right to the race for Marion County Prosecutor Anne Marie. New numbers coming in, really the first batch of numbers with 23% reporting. Democrat incumbent Ryan Mears leading over Republican Cindy Carrasco, 58% to 42%. That is represented by about 41,000 absentee votes so far and roughly 41 voting centers. So those are the latest numbers in the race for Marion County Prosecutor. We've just learned NBC News has called House District 9 in Indiana for Aaron Houchin. That has been called. And also NBC News has called U.S. District 2 in the House for in Indiana for the Republican candidate in that race, Rudy Yakin. This is not significant in terms of who won because this is a Republican stronghold and has been for a long time. But it's worth noting because this is the seat left by Congresswoman Jackie Walorski, who was killed in that car accident earlier this fall. She had held that seat for about 10 years, a long time state representative and then Congresswoman who died in a car accident. Rudy Yakin was her finance director and also a long-time ally. He was also endorsed by Congresswoman Walorski's husband in this race. So Rudy Yakin being elected to U.S. House District 2, as NBC News has called it. In the Secretary of State race, we've got Marion County numbers. Let's go over here and I'll show them to you. Actually, here are the statewide numbers in the Secretary of State race with 9% reporting. Diego Morales leading significantly, 57% to 37%. But I just got Marion County numbers in. And it looks like in Marion County, Destiny Scott Wells, the Democrat, is leading Morales 62% to 31%. That also not a surprise because Marion County is a Democrat stronghold. So those are the latest numbers. We're going to continue to follow them, and we will bring you new numbers just as soon as we get them. Send it back to you in the studio.
All right, Dustin, thanks so much. Before we let you go, could you go back and show our viewers on that big wall there the prosecutor's race there in Marion County, because we were seeing those numbers, and I know a lot of our viewers are very interested here in Marion County. It's one of the biggest races, if not the biggest race. Tell us what you're learning in terms of voting in the Marion County prosecutor's race.
Yeah, so let's show these numbers to you again. 23% of precincts reporting, and that is roughly 41,000 absentee votes and 41 voting centers. So still a lot of numbers to come in on this race, but right now, incumbent Democrat Ryan Mears leads Republican challenger Cindy Carrasco 46,000 and some votes to 33,000 and some votes. We are expecting those numbers to be updated pretty regularly. In fact, I think we may be getting some new numbers. As soon as we do, we'll pass them along to you, Scott.
Good job, Dustin. Thank you so much. And that prosecutor's race that we'll continue to cover here as our election night coverage continues here across our streaming platforms.
Absolutely. A very big deal there. They disagree on a number of topics. Ryan Mears and Cindy Carrasco, when it comes to crime. Ryan Mears focusing on other issues that lead to high crime. He wants to focus on jobs, mental health. Cindy Carrasco, she wants to be tough on crime. She wants to focus on putting more people behind bars. Another issue here, big issue, abortion. Mears says he will not prosecute abortion cases against women and health providers. Carrasco says the goal is not to necessarily go after women, but she doesn't think that you can make a blanket statement to just not prosecute, not to do what the law says. So they disagree on a lot of different issues. Marijuana policing, we can talk about those in just a little bit coming up. But let's get out to Sierra Putman. She is at the Marion County election headquarters, which we're going to change it actually and go straight to Ann and see what our analysts are saying about tonight as we get more numbers rolling in. Ann?
Well, you bring up some really great points there, Felicia, about the prosecutor's race and Ryan Mears on second chances and the marijuana immunity and Cindy Carrasco coming after him and saying, well, you're not being tough enough on crime. We're looking at this, 42 precincts out of 185, 23% reporting. Ryan Mears leading 58% of the vote, Cindy Carrasco 42%. I'm going to start with you. And Leanne, if you can tell me, what are you reading from this so far?
Well, here's what I think about this race. This race is a giant test case to see how close they can get to the mayor's race next year. The Republicans can get to the mayor's race. And I'm really grateful for those numbers right now because I think at the end of the night we will see, you know, it was nothing more than a hope. And they were also testing issues like crime. Is putting the issue of crime out there enough to get Democrats to switch over? But I'd like to remind people, put yourself in the shoes of a Democratic voter in Marion County, in a very red state of Indiana. We are not going to give up Marion County. We're not going to give it up easily. And that's the message we're going to send tonight with the prosecutor's race.
Have you been happy with how Ryan Mears has performed as prosecutor?
He's a wonderful person, and I think he's an incredible prosecutor. And he follows in the footsteps of Prosecutor Terry Curry, who is a very popular prosecutor for Marion County.
And I read in the Indianapolis Star that Terry Curry's family actually endorsed Cindy.
I don't know which family members, but I think it's fair to say we all have family members that don't vote along the same lines.
Yeah, I did find that interesting because that was his mentor, and then if his mentor's family was not endorsing him, there had to be some disagreement there on some sort of principle. Do you have any thoughts on that, Robert?
Well, she's half right. Ryan Mears is a terrific guy. As someone who lives in Fountain Square, I'm not a fan per se of how he's performed in office. I don't think it's a little peace weed or abortion that's driving the angst about crime in Marion County. It's murders, and it's people not feeling safe. And I hope whoever wins that race, I think Cindy's done a terrific job. People have really listened to her. You're right about Terry Curry, a wonderful, wonderful man who left us far, far too soon. But I also agree with her. I guess I'll just keep that mantra. People are looking at this race to see whether Republicans can be viable in the mayor's race next year. The big advantage that Cindy had, everyone believes there's a crime problem. She didn't have to convince them. The disadvantage she had is that nobody really knows who Ryan Mears is. His name ID isn't that high. Next year, if crime is an issue, everyone knows who Joe Hogsett is, and that'll be a completely different test.
It is interesting because when you think of Ryan Mears' predecessors, the prosecutor has been much more of a vocal figure, much more of someone. Ryan Mears even is just kind of been more behind the scenes.
Well, I think that's true. And also, we've had some very high-profile prosecutors in the last three decades. Carl Brizzi, Scott Newman, obviously Steve Goldsmith.
All the way back to Modisette.
Exactly right. So, you know, who became Attorney General after he lost to Newman in 1994. And Mears has taken a different approach. He's also taken sort of a different approach to prosecuting criminals. And there's a lot of folks I know who are unhappy with it. Whether there'll be enough to topple him, I don't know.
Dr. Borja, you were making comments about perhaps some of the outreach that he has made, Ryan Mears, that maybe perhaps he hasn't gotten credit for.
Yes, so I am actually an expert on anti-Asian racism during the pandemic. That's a lot of what my work is about, and we know that Asian Americans have experienced a really dramatic rise in hate crimes during the pandemic, 149% increase between 2019 and 2020. For example. And one thing I find notable is that Ryan Mears actually took the time to talk to Asian Americans and had a lot of conversations with people at a hate crime summit that took place earlier this year. I think people pay attention to when people talk to their community and address their specific concerns. So on one hand, it's very local. But I want to remind us of the bigger picture here, because my job here is, I think, to situate the story here in Indiana in the broader national story. And we know that this focus on crime in the prosecutor's race is part of a broader focus on crime in this election overall. We see in Wisconsin, for example, the races there, they're also talking about crime. The Republican Party has released tons of ads about crime. So this is a big issue in general. This election season, 6 in 10 registered voters, according to Pew, said that crime is an important issue. However, it does rank much lower than the economy. So I think it's important for us to remember that while it's very local, the conversations, the sharing of ideas, that is also very national in scope, and the focus on crime is part of that.
How much of the partisanship, the polarization of the parties, do you think is playing out in this prosecutor's race?
I think it plays out in everything that happens now. I wish it didn't. But I think that is the reality of our politics in America today.
Yeah, and to go back to the Secretary of State's race, the polarization and partisan, you think that's strongly at play there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're testing out certain issues, and you can see themes, and we can talk about, as Melissa said, the impact of the national themes and issues on state races, and unless you have competitive local races, you're going to get a lot of noise from the national. From national politics. And so, and crime is it's a really big issue that they're testing out all over this country right now. And it's a triple threat because, you know, people in urban areas where the crime typically is happening are concerned, and people in suburban areas say, well, I don't want it to come to the suburban areas. And then people in rural areas say, look, well, that's why they're so different than us, because we're safe here. So it really does connect with all three tiers of different types of voters. But I will say, in Marion County, voters are very well educated, and they do like the job that Ryan Mears is doing.
Well, we want a prosecutor who's going to be tough on crime, whatever party, right? You want your streets to be safe. We want our community to be safe. I want to be able to walk downtown on Monument Circle. I don't like to see that Starbucks was closed downtown because they didn't think it was safe. You know,
Terry Curry was tough on crime. I mean, the head of the FOP, I've known him for 25 years. There's no bigger fan of Terry Curry than Rick Snyder, the head of FOP 86. That's one thing. Two, I would also say that progressive...
But he did not support Ryan Mears.
He does not. He does not.
Strongly does not.
That is a fair statement.
Okay.
I also think it's fair to say, and I'm not making this as a criticism, that progressive fundraisers and progressive political action committees have targeted prosecutor races around the United States for at least the last decade. I mean, I know George Soros is a boogeyman, but he's given a lot of money to try to elect progressive prosecutors in jurisdictions throughout the country. Last thing I'll say is, it's interesting about, we talk about the partisan divide, how hardcore R's, hardcore D's, and maybe hardcore libertarians, if you want to mention them, of course, are not straying. But Indiana and Indianapolis has a history of that. Democrats voted for Lugar, Republicans voted for Peterson, Republicans voted for Bai, Republicans voted for Andy Jacobs, the great Andy Jacobs. Democrats voted for Mitch Daniels in huge numbers. Democrats voted for Greg Ballard. I really like to see that, and I hope that it comes back. Whether it will, I don't know. But Indiana and Indianapolis-Marion County have a history of saying, I'm a proud Republican or Democrat, but I think this person's doing a damn good job.
It's social media.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
You know, it's
misinformation, social media. People aren't talking to their neighbors as much anymore. Then we have the pandemic on top of that. So it's exacerbated that problem.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, the count is continuing downtown. Sierra Putman is keeping an eye on the situation at the Marion County Election Board. And Sierra, we're checking in. Any new news from there?
No. not too long ago, we had the first dump of election results, and that is due to all the work that these poll workers have been doing. They're taking absentee ballots out of their envelopes. They're also putting them through the tabulators so they can be counted. And not too long ago, the Marion County Election Board decided to do things a little bit different when it came to posting. They decided to post a pretty large number of those votes, 40,000 absentee votes, and then other votes from 42 vote centers. So you're starting to see the results from just under 80,000 ballots. But you know, that's only a percentage of the total votes that were cast today, and that's why you have these workers still hard at work. How long will they be here? We actually do not know. In the past, they have actually been counting and doing this work until about midnight or 1 in the morning. So we're going to have to wait and see. Back to you all in the studio.
All right, Sierra Putman, thanks so much. It's just so interesting to watch this real-time counting of the ballots in here in Marion County. We just don't see this very often. Of course, we're down there every election covering it, but seeing it with our own eyes, our own cameras, and being able to bring it to you is just so important, I think, for all voters to see, Felicia.
Absolutely, especially after everything that has happened from the 2020 election, and then, of course, with the 2022 election, there are a lot of questions surrounding our elections. People want transparency. They want to know what's happening. They want to know that their vote is being counted. And so for them to be able to show this and for the differences to be made to provide more transparency,
right,
I think that's certainly a positive thing. It's good to see. We appreciate Sierra bringing us that coverage. I know we are standing by. We're waiting to see when Senator Todd Young is going to be speaking. We were getting a couple warnings that he might be coming up next. Now we're hearing that he is waiting to concede first. He wants to, well, excuse me.
To hear the concession
concession.
Right, from the Hammond Mayor, Tom McDermott. Let's get back inside our newsroom, and Dustin Grove's been monitoring all the big national races. Dustin?
Yeah, hey, Scott, want to get right over to U.S. House District 1, the race that a lot of eyes around the country are watching as kind of a bellwether district, how this district may go, other districts across the country may go. Frank Mervyn, the incumbent Democrat, leading over Republican challenger Jennifer Ruth Green, 31,000 some votes to 20,000, about a 60-40 difference right now. But it's important to note that these numbers are preliminary, and they're also very small in number. In fact, technically, we have more than 0%, but not much more than that. So those numbers are going to go up throughout the evening as soon as those numbers come in. I want to show you the U.S. Senate balance of power and where things are falling and get to the state of Pennsylvania. And it looks like, again, just 1% of precincts reporting. But right now, Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman leading significantly over Republican challenger Dr. Mehmet Oz, 83% to 15%. That's one of the toss-up states that we're watching in terms of the balance of power in the Senate. Let's send it back to you for now.
All right, Dustin, thanks so much. Want to let you know what's going to be happening here. We're going to take a break, a momentary break here across our streaming platforms. We have an update that we're going to do over on Channel 13, and then we will be back with you here on streaming. So again, hang in there. We're going to take a break, do an update for our audience over on Channel 13. And good evening. Welcome to Election 2022 here in Central Indiana. It's an electric night as people are waiting for key race results to come in.
Absolutely. Let's get straight to our top races. Incumbent Ryan Mears fighting to keep his job as Marion County prosecutor. He is going up against Republican challenger Cindy Carrasco.
Here are the results so far. And again, this is with 23% of the precincts reporting. The incumbent, the Democrat Ryan Mears, with 58%, and the Republican challenger Cindy Carrasco with 42%. Again, just 23% of the precincts are reporting right now. Let's get right out to Emily Longnecker and Jenny Runovich, both of them live tonight. Let's begin with Jenny. out at the Republican headquarters. Jenny?
And Scott, let's take a listen to Senator Todd Young, the incumbent who just won a second term. He's speaking now.
First, my family. My wife, Jenny, our 4 beautiful kids, my mom, Nancy. You can offer your round of applause. My siblings, their family. There may be some other family present, but characteristically, they're off stage. But never doubt that this exercise is a whole of family effort, and I am so appreciative of them, especially as we adjust from Dad's passing. To my opponents, Mayor McDermott, Mr. Seniak. You know, it's not easy running for office. It's not easy on one's family. It's not easy in a tough environment, and I really want to commend them for being part of the process, for running strong, and I ask that all of you give them a round of applause. And to their supporters, I'll carry this message to the 92 different counties around Indiana in coming months and years, but I simply say to them, thank you. Thank you for the privilege.
U.S. Senator Todd Young, the 50-year-old, just won a second term into the U.S. Senate. He will spend the next 6 years once again serving Hoosiers for his second term in the Senate. I want to head over to our colleague, Emily Longnecker, who is with Democrats tonight. Emily?
Hey, Jenny. Yeah, just listening to Senator Todd Young acknowledge his competitors, Tom McDermott and James Steniak, saying that, you know, it's not easy to run for office. We are told from Tom McDermott's people that he is set to take the podium here at any minute. In fact, you can see supporters up there right now. We know a lot of his friends from the United States Navy that served with him in the Navy came today to surprise him and went with him to some of the polls. So we're told that Tom McDermott should be here at any minute. You know, he acknowledged from the beginning that this was going to be an uphill battle because he was out fundraise, but that he was a straight talker, a straight shooter, and that's why he has served as the mayor of Hammond for so long. So it looks like he's going to stay in that role. Scott, Felicia, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Emily Longnecker reporting live from the Democratic headquarters tonight in downtown Indianapolis. Thank you. That's going to do it for our election coverage special cut-in. We'll be back on air with the latest results in just a little bit. That's coming up at 8:56 tonight. We'll have another update.
And we also want to let you know that you can follow along with us right now. We're on WTHR Plus streaming for our ongoing election coverage. Just go ahead and open up the news app. We're also on Facebook across all of our streaming platforms. You can join us there, and we'll be back with you in a half hour.
They've gone to great lengths to always show up. And so many gave energy to our campaign, and they gave inspiration to me when I was feeling tired. So I want to thank specifically Leah, Mackenzie, Sam, Cody, Emily, Lindsay, Heidi, Sydney, Reagan, Liam, Luke, Gavin, Jack, Ryan, Tom, Tori, Abby, Matt.
Welcome in. You are watching Senator Todd Young giving his acceptance speech right now. He is live downtown at the JW Marriott, where the Republican headquarters. He is accepting that he has won the election again. He will stay in office for another 6 years.
Let's go ahead and listen in to Senator Young.
One of the things that makes Indiana a great place to live, play, work, pray, it's because we have amazing civic leaders that show up, not just for themselves, not just for their own companies, but show up when it really matters, when they feel like there's a lot on the line. So I really thank all of them. And to every Hoosier who found $5, $10, $20 during a down economy to add some grassroots energy and some important wherewithal to our campaign, I thank you for your generosity. To my in-state team, led by Andrew Kosak, yes. Yeah, Kosak has some fans here tonight. With Deb Johannes, Jay Kenworthy, there are no doubt others, and I'll have an opportunity to thank all of you, I think, this week. But thank you for the work you do. You serve your fellow Hoosier with great professionalism, and you make me look passably good even on a bad day. So thank you. To my team in the Senate, led by our Chief of Staff, John Connell, he deserves a round of applause. Best Chief of Staff in the Senate, with Lauren O'Brien and Matt Lahr. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your counsel. Thanks for believing in me. Our hardworking, talented campaign staff. God, they're amazing. Led by our campaign manager, Eric Cullen, who dedicated well over 2 years to this cause, and he never skipped a beat. He always worked hard. He always brought creativity to this position, and for that, Eric, I really appreciate it. And many other talented individuals on the campaign, Arpit, Jahan, Brian Gamache, Andrew Johannes. You know, collectively, you prove that innovation in today's campaigns isn't the province of blue coastal states. We have one of the most sophisticated campaign operations I've seen in the entire country. So thank you for resourcing it. I have some important women I haven't mentioned yet. Emily Daniel Spalding, Courtney Taylor, Natalie Goodwin.
That is Republican Senator Todd Young giving his acceptance speech tonight. He'll be in office another 6 years. He has just been elected by Indiana voters to serve again.
That's right. Now let's get into our newsroom. Dustin Grove joining us. He's got the latest results in some of these national races in terms of the balance of power and some of the other races that you're paying attention to. Hi, Dustin.
Hey, Scott. Want to update you on the congressional races here in Indiana. In fact, NBC News has called them all except for one. Republican Greg Pence in the 6th District. Pence reelected to another term. Republican Victoria Spartz in the 5th District. Also reelected. Republican Aaron Houchin elected to represent District 9. Republican Rudy Yakum elected to represent U.S. House District 2 in Congress. Democrat Andre Carson in District 7 here in Marion County. Republican Jim Banks reelected to another term in the 3rd District up in Northeast Indiana. And Republican Jim Baird reelected to the 4th District. We are waiting on District 1 where Frank Mervyn is running to be reelected. Freshman Congressman Frank Mervyn, the Democrat in that district. Jennifer Ruth Green, the Republican challenger, is down by a little more than 10,000 votes. 60%, 40% in that race. We're still waiting on numbers to come in. We'll update you as soon as we get more.
All right, Dustin, thanks so much. So many of these congressional races falling into place, I think, where a lot of the experts expected tonight. But again, as Dustin pointed out, that District 1 up in the northwest part of the state up there in the region in Gary, Indiana, that's one that we're paying close attention to, not only here in Indiana, but Felicia, they're paying attention to that race all across the country because the balance of power in terms of Congress basically comes down to Republicans needing a net 5 pickups in the House, and they're eyeing that one as being one of those net 5 in order for Republicans to take control of the Congress.
They're looking at what that means nationally, the implications there, but also what that would mean locally. I mean, we're talking 92 years that has been a Democratic stronghold, so it would definitely be history-making if it were to turn Republican. Let's get over to Anne-Marie Tiernan. She's sitting down with analysts tonight. They're breaking down some of the top races around the state and around the country. Hey, Ann.
Yeah, well, that U.S. House District 1 is the one that we're talking about right now. You know, Mervan is a first-term incumbent. We've been talking about that being a long-time Democratic stronghold, but he's more relatively new to that area. A very strong candidate with Jennifer Ruth Green. It's interesting that these figures, we see that the vote total is 52,000, but the precincts are not coming in. So the confidence in like what percentage that is, and when we're looking at 60-40 for Mervan versus Green, that's what we're talking about over here on the panel. Wouldn't you say, Bob?
Sure, and Mervan's name, I mean, he's a new U.S. Congressman, but his family's name is very, very big up there. May I please also, and I'll defer to the group to talk about District 1, but may I please just say how thrilled I am that Todd Young won again. He's really been almost like a giant killer. You know, he beat Barron Hill when Barron Hill was an incumbent. He beat Evan Bayh when he came back in the race in 16, and everyone thought that Evan Bayh was going to walk away. Todd Young's been a terrific conservative senator, really in the mold of Richard Lugar. He worked in Lugar's office, Marine Corps, Naval Academy. He's got a real chance, Todd does, to be a force in the United States Senate, and we're lucky in Indiana to have him back there.
All right, let's talk about Frank Mervan.
Sure. So again, like you said, those could be early voting numbers. I'm not sure, but I think this is a similar. I mean, I have to start again by saying the Republicans deliberately designed this district to be more competitive, to make sure that Republicans had a chance, and they spent a lot of money on this race, a lot of national money going into this race. And I can't help but say, you know, there are 9 congressional seats in Indiana, and the Democrats have Congressman Carson, and we have Congressman Mervan, and the other 7 are very solidly Republican. And I used to be the 5th District chair, congressional chair, when the 5th District was competitive, and we made inroads in the 5th District. And so what did the Indiana Republican legislature do? They moved the line up and removed Marion County from the 5th District. So now we're used to see Victoria Sparks signs everywhere. In every field in Hamilton County, you didn't see very many at all this time, because that race became significantly less competitive, so that Republicans now are spending all their money on the 1st. But I think it's a little bit like the prosecutor's race. I think we're going to show them, don't mess with us. Like we have Congressman Carson, and we want to keep Mervan, and we will hopefully show a strong showing that's going to be the case, so that in 2 years, and as Bob said, Mervan is a very well-known and well-liked person up there.
Well, let's let Melissa come in here on this race here in the 1st District.
So I think one thing to keep in mind is that voters are aware of what's at stake with that race. According to Pew, 65% of voters believe that keeping control of Congress or taking control of Congress is an important issue to them. And this is a toss-up race. It's had a ton of money funneled into it from both sides. We know it's competitive, and voters know that their vote will matter not just for the fate of their district, but for the whole country. So we're talking about a very consequential race, highly motivated voters who are understanding this issue in the broader context of controlling Congress.
All right, Todd Young is standing by live. Let's go to him. Jenny?
Senator Young, what made the difference in this election, and how do you plan to use that support from Hoosiers to carry on in a second term?
Yeah, well, listen, there were a couple of things that made a difference. Of course, people are hurting, and I was able to speak to that. I was able to acknowledge the source of their pain. It was inflation, it was a lack of border security, it was crime in the streets, and point 2, a better path, and that's where we'll head next with this. We're going to focus on security. We're going to focus on ensuring that when we spend public dollars, those dollars are being spent in a wise way. And I would characterize the mandate as a back-to-basics mandate. Stop the ideological sort of leftward lurch we've seen, but rank-and-file Americans are also, I think, going to be registering their opinions tonight that they don't want either party to gravitate towards the extremes. They just want their daily expenses to be affordable. They want to live in safe communities, and they want us to focus on those sorts of priorities.
It's looking increasingly like Republicans might take the Senate and the House.
Yes.
For you, what's priority 1 for a Republican Congress?
Well, we need to pass a budget. We need to make sure that we work to pass spending bills, or so-called appropriations bills, consistent with that budget. And all of that is in furtherance of trying to get spending under control. We still need to spend money. We need to make important investments in our people, in our security, in our infrastructure. But the American people don't want us to make silly investments, and so it's going to require a lot of scrutiny and internal conversation to get that right.
What's going to need to be investigations coming out, particularly on the Senate side, if Republicans do take that chamber?
We're going to have that conversation about what investigations will occur, but yes, I do. I see a lot of oversight hearings, and some sorts of investigations probably occurring.
What cuts are going to need to be made for the debt ceiling to get raised?
Yeah, so those are internal conversations that we have yet to have. It would have been premature to have them before the election. We'll have them after the election.
One more question. About areas where you could try to find compromise. What areas do you find the most promise for that to happen?
Upping our game with respect to competing against China, something I've been very actively involved in. Ensuring that we continue to improve our funding programs for upskilling and reskilling our workforce and bringing our young people into the workforce. Those are going to be really important priorities, and there will be other things, but those are the first that come to mind.
How's this feel, Todd?
This feels amazing. I mean, this is a 2-year job interview, and it's really encouraging that the people of Indiana have embraced the work we've done and registered their confidence in my work as I move forward.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator. Thanks.
So you're listening to U.S. Senator Todd Young, who just was elected to a second term, obviously laying out his priorities for the coming term, and then also talking about what he thinks really made a difference in this particular election and the vote of confidence that Hoosiers gave him to continue working on behalf of Hoosiers in Washington. Scott and Felicia, back to you.
All right, Jenny, live at the JW Marriott downtown Indianapolis at the Republican headquarters, we just heard from Senator Todd Young. Jenny, we'll check back in with you and get the landscape of what's going on there.
All right, so Todd Young beating Tom McDermott tonight. Emily Longnecker is with the Hammond mayor right now. Emily?
Yeah, I am. Tom McDermott here tonight just speaking to his supporters, thanking them for all of their support. Mayor McDermott, a tough night for you.
Hi, how's it going? I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Tough night for you.
Yeah. It was not the way I pictured it, that's for sure.
You talked about some of your friends coming today that surprised you.
Yeah, my Navy buddies from Hyman G. Rickover actually showed up and surprised me today, so it was nice to see them. I haven't seen them in years. So.
And when you called Senator Young, you told him congratulations. What did you say to him?
I said I wish him well for the next 6 years, and I meant every word of it, because if Senator Young's doing well for the next 6 years, and the state of Indiana is doing well, and the country's doing well, so I'm an American first, I'm a Hoosier second, and I called him and sincerely wished him the best of luck. He beat me, he was the best man in this race, and I wish him well.
You acknowledged that this was an uphill battle, right?
What's that?
You acknowledged that this was an uphill battle going into this race, and yet you went.
Yeah, it was an uphill battle. I got no love whatsoever from Washington, D.C. The National Democrats decided I wasn't a worthy candidate, and they invested $0 and 0 cents in Indiana. So I was on my own, and I was fighting against a guy with millions of dollars in the bank, and I tried to make a race of it, and I would like to think we did, and I'm not sure if we did or not, being honest, but I gave it my best. I was honest. I didn't lie. I shook Hoosiers' hands, and I wished them the best, and I love this state, and I'm lucky.
You talked to Senator Joe Donnelly, former Senator Joe Donnelly, and he told you what's the worst that can happen? You'll see a beautiful state, right? That's what you did.
He was right. I met a lot of great Hoosiers, and I saw a beautiful state, and I'm lucky enough to be able to run for U.S. Senate in a great state, and I was a Democratic nominee, and it didn't turn out the way I wanted, and you know, the thing about democracy is when we lose, the great part of democracy is acknowledging the person that beat you and wishing him well, and I did that today, and I do wish him well.
The next step, back to Hammond.
I'm going back to Hammond. I'm going to take a couple weeks off and try to dry my tears, and we'll figure out what's next. So.
We talked about, when I interviewed you leading into this, you talked about how you do triathlons, so you hadn't been able to do that while you were campaigning. Are you going to get back in that?
It's obvious that I've been out of shape, so yeah, I need to get back in shape, and you know, I have some time to get back in shape, but yeah, I have some more time, that's for sure. I'm not going to be driving all over Indiana anymore, so.
Thank you, Mayor McDermott. Thanks for being here.
Again.
All right, take care. Yeah, so Mayor Tom McDermott saying that he is heading back to Hammond, taking a couple weeks off, saying that he called Senator Todd Young and congratulated him, saying that, you know, he knew that this was an uphill battle, acknowledging that, you know, he was out fundraised, and you heard him say that he felt like he didn't get a lot of support from the National Democratic Party, but he said this is democracy, and when you lose, you acknowledge that, and you tell your opponent congratulations, and you carry on. And so that's what he's doing tonight. But you obviously saw him emotional. He's an emotional guy. Folks in his campaign have said that all along, that he has a lot of passion, that he's a straight talker, and you saw that on display here tonight. Scott, Felicia?
Well, and you certainly heard Senator Young say this is like a 2-year job interview, and so for Mayor McDermott, on the losing end of things, this has been an equally long process for him and losing tonight, but we certainly appreciate the mayor's comments with you in the interview. Thanks so much, Emily, for bringing that live downtown from Democratic headquarters.
And we want to go ahead and check in with Anne-Marie Tiernan. She's sitting with analysts. They're kind of breaking down what's going on. And what we just saw was just a healthy exchange in democracy right there. A candidate has to win, somebody has to lose, and there has to be a concession in order for democracy to function.
Well, and it takes a lot of money. As you were hearing from McDermott, they're feeling like that maybe he didn't get the support from the National Party, thinking that perhaps their money was not best spent on him, seeing that Senator Young had a stronghold here and was a pretty powerful incumbent. A couple of things we're talking about here over in the panel. Let's start first with these statewide races. We're noticing with the Secretary of State, the state auditor, and the state treasurer. We've been talking about this issue of whether or not this is going to be a straight party ticket. People are voting for the Republicans. We are seeing that the state auditor and the treasurer races are in that 60 to 62% favor of the Republicans, but when we go to the Secretary of State, it is less. That the Republican candidate, Diego Morales, has 54%, and that Destiny Wells, the Democrat, 40%. I hope you're following our line of thinking here, that the Secretary of State is not getting the support from the Republicans as consistently as the other statewide offices. What does that say to you, Leanne?
Well, I think it's, again, all three of the Democratic candidates have really been working together, and they've been a team. And I think as our state chairman, Mike Schmull, said earlier, it's still a little bit early to make any determinations about that. But that's typical. You typically see the race that's been in the news the most is the Secretary of State's race. It's not because Destiny's any better candidate than the other two that the state party is running. She's an excellent candidate, but they're all fantastic. It's the fact that Diego Morales has had so many knocks against him and so much negative press that so many things have come out about him during this campaign. And again, he lost. He beat a sitting incumbent, so he didn't even have the party support from the beginning. And so that's the reflection of the difference in the drop off there. And it's hard to get people excited about a state auditor's race or state treasurer's race and even a state Secretary of State race, but people are paying attention to the Secretary of State race.
Which now has 22% of the vote in, Robert.
Well, I mean, one thing I learned from my former boss, Murray Clark, who's a friend of many of us when I worked at the Indiana Republican Party, is you don't ignore the obvious. And he's taken some hits, and there's no doubt about it. Clearly, the Democrats have focused on this race as their best chance to win. I would disagree somewhat a little bit and just say Destiny Wells has been a significantly better candidate than the other two statewide from my perspective and having talked to her. But Diego's worked hard. He's still up 14 points. You know, John Kennedy said a one-vote victory is a mandate of some kind. And that's all it takes.
Melissa, anything you want to add on that before we switch to the new topic of the demographics of District 1?
Well, I want to add, we still don't have, it looks like from these early numbers, we don't have a lot of Marion County in, and we don't have a lot of the congressional Lake County in, it appears. So it's still early, as our chairman said.
Yeah, so we're at 38% now reporting for the Marion County prosecutor. Ryan Mears with the lead there, 57% to 43%. And of course, we do have in Lake County the different time that the polls close there, correct? So that's a little bit of the delay. Melissa.
Well, I want to talk about Congressional District 1.
I know you do. The demographics there, because Leanne's been talking about, you know, this redrawing of the lines there. And what did you want to say about that?
Well, I think one thing to keep in mind is that Congressional District 1 has a significant population of black voters. This is a congressional district, 18% black voters. Black voters matter, and they really matter in this district. What's interesting to me is that the Republican Party is running a black female candidate in that district. But I think we need to keep in mind some of the headwinds that that candidate is facing. So again, a little bit more Pew data to help us situate what's happening here. Only 1 in 10 black voters identify with the Republican Party. And a survey done in October of this year found that only 4% of black registered voters would vote for a black Republican candidate when there's a Democratic candidate given to them. 69% said they would back the Democratic candidate. So I don't think there's necessarily any clear evidence that simply running a black candidate will help the GOP, but we'll see. Maybe something interesting could happen in Congressional District 1 tonight.
So you're talking about more of an allegiance to the party. We've been talking about the partisan, the polarization, rather than the candidate, even though maybe the outward appearances is that this candidate might represent you.
Right. And I think we can think about Congressional District 1 in relation to other times the Republican Party has run a black candidate hoping to peel away black voters. I mean, we can think about, for example, Georgia, the Senate race in Georgia. So it's hard to know what's going to happen, but that's something I'm definitely thinking about a lot with these races.
As far as the gerrymandering accusations made by my friend, I would say
the redrawing of the lines up in the first
well,
district.
when you don't get to draw the lines, you always say it's gerrymandering. And when you get to draw the lines, you get to draw them the way you want to. And you know what? House District 1 is more competitive, so that can't be gerrymandering. That's A. B.
That's fine. Go ahead and draw District 1 more competitive, but also draw the 5th District, the 6th, the 8th, the 9th, and the other ones more competitive too. Fine with me.
But here's the problem with Leanne's argument. When you run a gubernatorial candidate in 2020 as a Democrat party, and he finishes 3rd in more than 30 counties, that's not a gerrymandering problem. And when more than 85% of all countywide elected officials in Indiana are Republican, that's not a gerrymandering problem. That's a branding and party problem.
Let's just look ahead real quick because we're going to be wrapping up here. What so far, over the results that you see tonight, are you predicting for the mayor's race and the governor's race in the years to come?
It depends on how close Cindy can come to Ryan to see if Republicans can get a strong candidate next year. Mayor Hogshead's obviously a terrific campaigner, enjoys it, has been around, knows the game. That's A. B, I don't have a clue who the Democrats would run for governor. None, zero. Their bench is decimated by the fact that they keep getting clocked in all these lower tier races.
Leanne?
It's extremely challenging to find people that are willing to put, I think it was Senator Young that, thanked Mayor McDermott for the time, all the energy and time he took to run. That is a significant commitment. I do think we have a bench. The Democrats have a bench. We had incredible candidates this time. We still have work to do, and I know Chairman Schmull is playing the long game, and we are trying not to be as focused cycle to cycle, but really focused on the long term and changing the trajectory of Indiana. And that starts by running really good candidates and starting to get our message out. But you can't do it. The Secretary of State's race and all these races started at the convention this summer. That's not a lot of time to get your message out. But 2 years is more time, and we still remain hopeful.
Do you think we can see Greg Ballard or Mitch Daniels on the ballot?
They're both very popular.
You're going to say it, Melissa.
Well,
and undefeated, by the way.
I continue to insist that the story in Indiana is very much shaped by what's going on nationally. And the direction that the Democratic Party takes or the Republican Party takes here in Indiana is going to be, in large part, determined by the agenda set by national leaders. And all politics is local, but increasingly because of media, because of institutions, because of the flow of money, it's becoming more national.
All right, and thank you so much for your insights tonight. We're going to go over to Scott and Felicia.
Absolutely. Anne-Marie, thank you so much. We are going to wrap our streaming just a little bit. We're going to take a break and then go to cut-ins on television. Stand by. Welcome back to our local election coverage as Hoosiers cast their ballots for several key seats at the local, state, and federal level.
It's Coming up on 9 o'clock, let's get inside of our newsroom. Dustin Grove is there. He's checking on the latest of these big races. Dustin?
Yeah, the balance of power in the Senate and the House, Scott. Let's take a look at the Senate first. 35 seats up for grabs, 9 races considered competitive, including this one right here. Look at this. In Georgia, where the Democrat incumbent is leading, but just ever so slightly over the Republican challenger. In fact, this one is being called too close to call, so we're keeping an eye on that. Also in the House, the eyes of the nation looking at this district race right here in Indiana, up in the region, the northwest part of Indiana. It has been, the district's been redrawn, so they're thinking the Republican has a chance. Jennifer Ruth Green. So far, though, Frank Mervyn, the incumbent, holding on to the seat 60 to 40%. Let's send it over to Jenny Runovich. Good evening, Jenny.
Good evening, Dustin. We just heard from U.S. Senator Todd Young in his acceptance speech. He will be spending another 6 years in Washington, serving in the U.S. Senate, making that speech just within the last 10-15 minutes from now up at the podium you see behind me. This will be his second term in the U.S. Senate. He called this process essentially a 2-year interview for the job, and he said this was an early night because he says the current administration made bad choices, said they need to stop reckless spending, enforce the law. And he focused, much of his campaign on the economy, on inflation, on national security. He said that really resonated with Hoosiers, and now it's time to get to work, he said. His campaign was also bolstered by a lot of fundraising. He had more than $14 million in contributions, and that's compared to about $1 million for his challenger. And I know Emily Longnecker spoke with that challenger, Hammond Mayor Tom McDermott, just a few moments ago, and we'll send it over to her. Emily, money a big issue in this campaign, clearly.
Yeah, and Tom McDermott has acknowledged that from the beginning, Jenny, thanks. He has talked about that from day one, that this was going to be an uphill battle. And he had tears in his eyes tonight when he got on that stage and he thanked his supporters. But he also congratulated Senator Todd Young. Take a listen to that.
I wish Todd Young well in the next 6 years, leading the state of Indiana as U.S. Senator, and I mean it with all my heart. The better he does, the better our state does. So I want to congratulate Todd Young for beating me tonight, and I wish him well in the next 6 years.
And from the beginning, national pundits said that this was not going to be a competitive race. And again, McDermott saying, he talked to former Indiana Senator Joe Donnelly about this run before he was going to do this run. And he said, Senator Donnelly said to him, what's the worst that can happen? You'll see a beautiful state. Mayor McDermott saying, in fact, that's exactly what he did. He crisscrossed all over the state, talking to voters. He really campaigned on abortion heavily, saying that if he made it to Washington, it would be because Hoosier women sent him there to codify Roe v. Wade. Of course, that didn't happen tonight. McDermott, again, acknowledging that he just felt like he didn't get enough support, enough finance from the National Democratic Party. So he's heading back to Hammond to serve as mayor. He is the longest serving mayor there, and he'll return to that after taking a little break, he told us tonight. Scott, Felicia?
All right, Emily, thanks so much. We have so many races that we're watching tonight. Of course, House District 1 up in the northwest part of Indiana, Marion County Prosecutor's race, Secretary of State, all watching that on WTHR.com.
That's going to do it for our election special cut-in tonight. We'll be back on air with the latest results at 9:26. See you then.